Drink beer. Think beer. You're listening to Brew Bloods.
Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we shall die. That from Egyptian Chancellor to the Pharaoh, Imhotep.
Man, that's one of your better fake quotes.
It is, and one actually pulled from history. I got in my little tiny time machine, went all the way back, put some mascara in my eye.
Well, you looked in a history book and found a name. You do put all these names associated with the beer quotes, even if they had nothing really to do with beer, and maybe they never even drank beer. You're just like, that's a historical figure that sounds authentic.
That's a name I pulled out of my ass.
Sure, yeah.
Welcome to episode 65 of Brew Bloods. We are back on the scene with
one of many
beer
things
lane.
you've done that.
And this is a very special episode for us. We've got an interview with one of our beer heroes, Michael Peticolas of Peticolas Brewing, and we've talked to him before, way back, I don't know, probably 15, 20 episodes ago. And we were at the Untapped Dallas this year.
That was a very different type of interview.
Very less intelligent, more drunk.
More just talking about how great his stuff was and then casually asking a question.
Do you like beer?
He got some great beer.
Do you enjoy the brewings of beer? Do you like
how brew go?
Do you like hop?
Right, exactly.
But we got in depth with Michael on current news.
We got so deep.
We always like to go deep. We dig deep, and we got into current events, and then we got into sort of his philosophies and his history, just growing up in Texas, and his life as a lawyer. But all that'll be coming up here shortly. But
the whole thing was really cool too. Just the way that he was so open about doing it and invites us in while they're doing a brew there, and we're pretty much just there with the crew and stuff. And
they were renovating a bathroom.
Dustin
got to enjoy the ladies' room.
I did, and then they, of course, poured some beers for you too, which was pretty awesome to do just in an off time like that.
Yeah, he was quite generous. We've been trying to put this together for a while, and we've been, like I said in the interview itself, I dropped the ball, but it's been a long time coming, and I think it's our best interview to date, and
definitely our most in depth for sure.
Definitely the most in depth, and
because we did a thing called prepare for the interview.
Well, it's not like we haven't prepared in the past. I think it's just
one other one we prepared for. A lot of them been on the fly.
The Naughty Moon we did not, because that was definitely on the fly. But
Tubbs was the only other one that we prepared.
We did, but that was like our first interview, so I was like way more nervous.
And I was super late, and you had to do most of it yourself.
Yes. So. But anyways, we have a couple of fan communications here. We got one from I've got an email here, electronic mail.
They didn't fax it?
Send
it by pigeon?
We do have a fax line if you want to try to fax. We'll print it out on our dot matrix printer. But
if you like to send it by carrier pigeon too, we can do that.
That's true. Just send it to Dustin's house.
Mark is always at home, so you can just send it to his home address.
And I have a coop at the top of my house where I get all my carrier pigeons.
He pretty much has a motorized chair that takes him around this house, so he never has to get up and do anything.
This email, it's very Wall-E style, for Idiocracy. This email comes from one Troy. He says this is Troy from Ohio.
Aikman? Oh.
Yeah. That's a name you don't hear much anymore is the name Troy.
I know. That's why my mind immediately went there.
It seems like a more 70s name, like spinning out of like the 70s college culture or something. I don't know. Like you would think that with the success of the Dallas Cowboys that there'd be a lot more Troys in this world, but
True.
Not a lot of Troys.
How about like a Royce? Do you hear that very much?
Royce even goes farther back, though.
You think so?
Who's going to name their kid after Royce City?
Hopefully no one.
Exactly. That's exactly why you don't hear the name Royce.
Or Royce Curtis.
Or Royce Curtis. Who's going to name their kid after Royce Curtis?
That's true.
Nobody.
Because no one knows who that is.
But Troy, at least, is a popular media figure that if dumb people are going to name their kids after Twilight book characters, then you think they could name them at least after a successful athlete.
There's not a lot of Hanks, even though we had a successful run of King of the Hill. Mm. And you should name yourself after a Mike Judge character.
Yeah, you should. Like Mountain Dew Camacho.
Right.
President Hector Elizondo Mountain Dew Camacho.
Exactly.
That's what Troy, that's what you should name your next baby. Is Hector Elizondo Mountain Dew Camacho.
And then the next one can be Hank.
Yeah. Hank Pepsi Camacho. Right. Anyways, his email, he has nothing to do with that. But he says, hey guys, first of all, I don't appreciate just the assumption that we're guys. I mean, maybe I'm just a lady with a really deep voice.
That's possible.
I don't know. I don't appreciate that malification of our culture here, but I'll allow it this time.
Never proven that you aren't a
That's
female.
right. Nobody's ever seen me.
That's true.
I could just be tucking it back, or I could be not have one at all.
That's true.
Could be
only one person can confirm that.
That's right. I could be hot dogging it in my taint. You'd never know. But he says, hey guys, listen to the most recent podcast where he talked about Stone's scheme to aid smaller brewers. And this is our reference to Greg Koch's fund, of where he's trying to help brewers who are looking to expand and they need help financially rather than selling out. He says, living here in Ohio, I'm getting excited for the Brewdog Brewery to open, and you well should be. But he says, what do you think about their Equity for Punks finance scheme? If it works, can you see this becoming a trend? Equity for Punks is basically Brewdog's plan. They're basically crowdfunding without the aid of Kickstarter or GoFundMe, I think is another one.
Sure.
Go F me.
Fund it up.
I think it's a cool idea. I'm kind of surprised that I go back and forth on this, right? It's kind of like the Green Bay Packers, right? You can buy shares of the team. Right. And it kind of gives you a sense of ownership and pride in that team.
Gives you a vote. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know all the details about Equity for Punks other than it's very similar in that you can buy shares in Brewdog, and it allows them to build more craft beer bars. It allows them to build new breweries, and they're building this one in Ohio so that they can get more beer to America. I'm guessing it's also like ownership in the Green Bay Packers in that ultimately you don't really have say over what Brewdogs does or anything like that. Right. That you're just funding an account that allows them to do things, and you get like maybe some ownership pride, like you said.
Right.
Yeah, that's. I would guess it's the same kind of thing.
You're basically putting on the Brewdog jersey,
right? Exactly,
your little Brewdog cheese hat, as it were.
Right.
I think it's a cool idea. I don't know. I forget. I considered it briefly. I can't remember all the rewards you get with investing at various levels. I think it's a cool idea. I think,
and this guy could invest at the highest level. Right. There is no doubt.
My portfolio is so luxurious.
He would get so much investment.
So it's the best portfolio.
It's a tremendous investment.
I think it's a cool idea, but I think part of the problem here is, for the mid-sized brewery that's looking to expand, I think it's a good idea. If you have public favorability and you have public awareness, if maybe, I don't know, if you get denied by Greg Koch, or I don't know what all of Greg Koch's terms are to get that money.
Sure.
If you can get it, I think that's awesome. I think it's great because it's a sign that people are voting with their dollar, literally, for your brewery to prop you up. Right. I think it's a great idea. I think it's cool. One of our friends, Vagabond Saints on Twitter, he has a clothing store that he just opened in.
He's our guy.
Alberta, Toronto,
yeah,
Canada. I can't remember. I forget which. Or maybe it's, I don't know, somewhere in Canada. He has a store. He designs custom shirts, hats. He designed our logo from the break room. Anyways, he just opened up a store. He did some crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding is a great thing. I did it. I helped fund Reading Rainbow to bring them back to kids.
It's a wonderful thing.
I've done a couple of projects here there, Veronica Mars. I think crowdfunding is awesome. And I think for a brewery, if it's done right, if you follow up on the money, if you follow that money and you follow up on it and make sure things get done, I think it's awesome. And
sure.
The great thing about Brewdog is they're ambassadors for beer, and they have the TV show on Spike, and they are very energetic about beer. And they're ones that they're going to follow up on their promises.
I would give money to them. I would give money to Stone, and I would give money to Dogfish for sure. Just off the top of my head,
right?
I feel like those guys are all super dedicated to the craft beer game, and I would be shocked if any of those guys ever did a sellout. I'll put it that way.
Where I have a little bit of problem is new breweries, right?
Sure.
If you have an upstart brewery that is looking to fund their startup via Kickstarter, that's where I have a little bit of a problem because sure, I can help you out. I can toss you $50, but obviously there's no guarantee you may even make it through, as we've seen with Dead Cowboy here locally.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you mentioned that because I had an opportunity back in the day to fund 512 in Austin, and they actually gave you ownership shares and said, if we get this off the ground and go, you get your name and a brick wall, I guess, at the brewery that says you were an original someone that funded it, and then you also had that percentage share of the actual company going forward. Probably would have been a good idea to have done, but I didn't do it at the time.
Well.
But that's kind of a cool thing. Yeah. It's more of a venture capital type investment. Maybe it's I don't know what you'd call it. Is it the angel funds? Whatever the rich guys do, where they
angel funds.
Yeah, it's probably more along those lines. I wouldn't put my 401k into something like that.
Right.
But if you got a couple of bucks, I don't mind, and you actually like what that brewery's going to do, and I don't know, I don't have a problem doing that either. I just think you need to be aware of what you're doing. If you're going to put it in with Brewdog, obviously you shouldn't put any of this money in an investment expecting a big return. The Brewdog thing seems more of a
assistance fund than it is I'm going to make money fund. The 512 was.
Well, no,
so you just got to know what you're doing when you're going into it and why you're doing it.
With equity for punks, let's be clear, you're not getting a return financially.
Exactly.
You're getting
pride of assistance.
Yeah, pride of assistance. It's an emotional return,
right?
And you're getting. I think there's some cool benefits if you do invest. I can't remember what it is, but as far as it becoming a trend, I don't know. It may for the established brewer. I don't think it's going to work out as well for an upstart unless that person is someone who has proven themselves to be a good brewer. But the problem is when you're an upstart, nobody knows you other than maybe in homebrew competitions.
Unless you spin off, like if you were a brewer somewhere and you spin off to do your own.
Yeah, let's say Michael Peticolas had a brewer who wanted to go start his own brewery, and he was famous in the community, and he could get enough attention. Or conversely, someone at Stone at a much larger brewery who was a known name who had the backing of Greg Koch, who would probably talk about it. Then maybe that would work.
Sure.
But just for your casual upstarts, some guy who just wants to hop in the game, I don't see that becoming a trend because I don't think a lot of people have a lot of faith. But for your guys who have been established and who are looking to expand, I think it could become a good way to expand and get that financing without selling out.
Those other guys will have to go to a true angel type fund,
right?
That somebody just says, "Oh, sure, I think this beer looks good."
Yeah, And the reason we're talking about this is because when normally we probably would have left these for the next episode, considering this is a long form interview. But both of this email and the voicemail we're about to play both have something to do with what we talk about in the interview. So here's a voicemail from Johnny B.
Play, motherfucker. On Brewbloods.
Hey, Brewbloods, this is Johnny B. Giving you a call. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Just listen to the episode. Kind of interesting news. Senator Amy Klobuchar out of Minnesota came and visited the distillery I worked at. And she's the champion in regards to the AB InBev Miller Coors merger. And what she was talking about, they couldn't really stop it because they've got some sort of legalese in their paperwork. But what was interesting was the way she talked about distribution. And she's going to send us more information, but she's really doing what she can to make sure that the little guys, craft brewers, have a voice when it comes to distribution, with potential fines of, $10,000 per store, she said, in regards to equality versus, big brewers versus craft brewers. But once I get that paperwork, I'll send it through to you. But just once again, Amy Klobuchar, Senator out of Minnesota, is really doing what she can to help the little guys. Love the show. Talk to you soon. Bye.
So before we address this, I love the Google text or speech to text.
Yeah, I know.
This is he said, big brewers versus craft brewers. Well, they translated it to big bears versus crackers.
Did you see what it translated for Brew Bloods right off the bat?
Boo boo. Yeah, hey boo boo.
Hey boo boo.
Hey boo boo. I think that's how you should always address us from now on. Is hey boo boo.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know that I have a lot to really say about that, other than when you send us that paperwork, we will send it to our show attorney.
Right, exactly.
The Brew Bloods barrister, Ryan. He will decipher all the legalese for us.
Exactly. He can maybe break it down and let us know what that means in plain terms.
Yeah, because, don't be surprised, we read it about a second grade level.
Oh, yeah.
And I speak it at about a 3-year-old level. So
our reading comprehension is about the same as Trump's vocabulary.
Yes, exactly. We have about 100-word vocabulary. So,
as you've noticed.
But he will, Ryan, our show attorney, will break it down into pictures and little pop-ups. He will craft an entire pop-up book just for that.
He'll do it, and then we'll say, now tell me like I'm a 3-year-old. And then he'll even dumb it down even more.
Puppet shows, all kinds of things. But yeah, thanks for the input, and it's good to know that, I don't know, I feel conflicted about the whole politics of the situation, that if she's the champion for the merger, that kind of worries me. But if there's a bent for the craft brewer, okay, I'll listen at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. The whole as we talk, we get really in depth in the whole politics and the show about how politicians are affecting us and affecting the craft brewer specifically, not us, but the craft brewer. So
Michael makes reference to that too in the interview.
Yeah.
Taking things out of the political spectrum and the influence that has.
Yes. So I think it's time we should just get straight to the interview. This is our interview with Michael Peticolas, the owner, proprietor, head brewer, whatever title you want to give him. Top to bottom, he is everything Peticolas. Michael Peticolas of Peticolas Brewing Company. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I heard y'all reference that, and I got a good laugh out of that. But that's what I like about those festivals. Frankly, it's a little bit different. You guys come in today all off of your jobs, right? Haven't even started drinking, and so sometimes when you run into the festival crowd, things are going a little bit differently, but that's what makes a festival fun. It makes a festival. So I was laughing about it at the time, and I was definitely laughing about it when you referenced it on the show I listened to today.
Yeah, I don't think Win Benz was tolerating us very well.
No, he wasn't?
I could be wrong. He just seemed like he was kind of annoyed.
I could see that probably a little bit more quickly than it would faze me.
Well, Michael Peticolas, thank you for being on the show.
I'm happy to be here. I'm appreciative of you guys reaching out to me to join you.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth, I guess it seemed like forever, and then I dropped the ball right before we went on vacation, and I was meant to follow up, and I totally forgot, and then it was like the day we decided we were going to do sit down for the last episode 64, I was like, oh crap, I totally forgot to follow up on that. So
oh shoot, I was supposed to talk to the guy that made this
totally
beer
forgot about that.
The beer. But
well, getting away and getting to Hawaii will do that to you, make you forget things. Plus a lot of drinking.
Yeah, Hawaii's a lot of fun though, and I'm on the other side of the fence of you two.
Yeah,
I would, because y'all posed the question, would you rather be in Hawaii with the limited craft beer selection,
right,
or here in Texas with what we've got? And I've known enough people who have lived in Hawaii to say that it's awesome, and it is paradise, but living there, you feel so far removed.
Yeah,
and all of those guys have eventually moved back. So I'm taking the other answer, and I'm going to say I would rather live here in Texas with our supply than Hawaii.
Fair enough.
So just for the record,
I wish
straight.
You definitely take my wife's perspective, because she fears that it would be very removed, and we would get tired of it after a certain point as well.
Yeah, the 2-week vacation is awesome.
Yeah.
But the 4-year... trying to figure out phone call times to call your friends. I don't know.
Yeah, when I was there, I worked 3 or 4 days on mainland time, so I was starting work at 4 a.m. and working till about 1, because I worked 10-hour days also, and so it was like, yeah.
That's your problem. You shouldn't be working when you're in Hawaii.
when you're a contractor, you make these compromises sometimes to keep your hours up, those billable hours.
I understand.
So we definitely want to go back and start from the beginning and figure out how this whole thing came to be, but we did talk about last episode a little bit, although we recorded it. It came out after the news came out, but we recorded it before that news came out. So we kind of sort of mentioned it, that you have a lawsuit, you and several, Revolver and I always want to call them the Injustice Society, but that's from DC Comics.
Live Oak.
Live Oak, and what's the Injustice... Institute for Justice, not Injustice.
Yeah.
Yes. That you guys filed a lawsuit last year to get rid of SB 639, which is the sales restriction law, which is where it's part of the 3-tier distribution system. And basically, you sell your distribution rights, and they can do whatever they want with them after that. You can never get any other compensation for them, right? Do I understand that completely?
You've got the basis there.
Right.
When you sign a distribution agreement in Texas, you are signing with an individual distributor. So for whatever the territory is, it can be very large or it can be very small. I mean, you can actually enter into a distribution agreement with a distributor for a single address. So for instance, if I wanted to get into a location I haven't had success getting into, maybe American Airlines, because they basically only buy beer from distributors, then I could, give away rights as small as that very address. Mm-hmm. But I do want to correct you, because you said you can sell those rights. You can't currently sell those rights.
You can't? Okay.
You could sell those rights. So you can only have a single distributor in a single territory, and then the length of that agreement is basically into perpetuity. It is almost impossible to void a contract with the distributor. Mm-hmm. There is a good cause exception if you can actually show good cause, and the distributor has a period of time to cure their defect. But if you are successful in breaking that contract, one of the measures of damages is the value of the brand. So if I wanted to break my contract with distributor A, and I was successful in arguing that it should be broken and I should get my territorial distribution rights back, then I would have to pay distributor A whatever the value of my brand is.
Right.
So what happened in 2013 when they passed the SB 639, as you've alluded to, it made it illegal for a brewer to sell those territorial distribution rights to a distributor, where prior to the law being passed, you would have competing distributors approaching various brewers to, basically make the play that, hey, we would like to distribute your beer, and we are such a firm believer of you and your brand. We're willing to pay you for the right to distribute your beer because it basically lasts into perpetuity, and they're your only distributor. And so you could receive cash value for the brand that you had built. They passed that law and literally made it illegal for me to sell my territorial distribution rights to a distributor. I literally have to give them away. If I want here locally Benny Keith or Andrews to distribute my beer, the way the law sits right now, maybe not in 2 weeks, but the way it sits right now, neither one of them could offer me any valuable consideration to distribute my beer. I literally have to give away those rights for free. And then to put insult to injury, and I'm a lawyer, you know this, so what a normal person says in 5 minutes, sometimes a lawyer says in 10, but what adds insult to injury is the right that I just gave away for free. A distributor could then freely go sell to another distributor. So distributor A, who I give my rights away to for free, could then sell those rights to distributor B for, I don't know, let's just say $1 million just to make it, easy round number. And there's nothing I, as a brewer, can say about that agreement. That's between those two parties. And so you've got a distributor who received rights for free, who then benefits by selling that brand to another distributor, and then take it to the next logical step. If I try to break that contract and am successful, I have to pay that distributor. So the only person who is losing out is the small guy, me, the brewer, the guy who created the actual brand.
It's very anti-small business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is... And that's the crux of the lawsuit. It's a constitutional claim. I think that's where you're going anyway.
Yeah.
It's, you can't just... you need to have some rational basis, some justification for taking away a right and enriching one party to the detriment of another. And what is that right? Why does the TABC feel that, two parties, or the state of Texas, perhaps I should say, that two parties, a willing distributor and a willing brewer, can't just get together and contract amongst the two of them in any way they see fit? So they, of course, have defenses, and whether those defenses will ultimately prevail, we'll see. Time will tell.
So why, because we're obviously not lawyers here, why a lawsuit versus trying to enact legislation? Or is that the only path for you?
No, it's a good question. I'm the kind of person, because of my background, I really sit and think about all of my various options. And you're right. Going the legislative route is definitely an avenue that you can pursue. So the 2017 Texas legislature is not in session this year. They're in session next year. So in 2017, we could potentially file a bill to revoke the language. I mean, because it's basically only a sentence that we're quibbling about here. We could revoke that language via the legislature. So that is one avenue. You could do that, or we could still do that. Is that going to be the Guild's agenda? I don't know whether it would be or not. I mean, this is something you kind of goes through a process with all of your other Guild members. What is most important to the Texas Craft Brewers Guild? Right. And so I think I've got that avenue available to me. But I also have the avenue of taking it out of the legislature altogether, taking it out of politics, if you will. I mean, and rest assured, politics are a very big part of what happens in the legislature, in session and out of session. And so, to have the ability to go through the court system, to put it in the hands of an independent judge who doesn't have a dog in a fight, who doesn't raise money for, from distributors, and let them rule upon an issue of law, where you're not really talking to a legislator or a lobbyist about, a law that should be passed or what its effect is. You're talking directly to the court and addressing an issue of whether or not that law is valid. Is it constitutional?
Right.
And so for me, I want to exhaust all of my legal remedies. Right. I'm not going to just exclusively go down one route to the detriment of all the others. I'm going to try whatever I can, but I wasn't going to sit back and do nothing. When I built a brewery and am doing my best to build a brand, to have the legislature literally take away my rights. I took a personal affront to it, frankly.
Understandable.
I mean, I built a career protecting people's rights. So when my rights were taken from me, it was, like I said, I kind of took it personally.
So to me, when I read this, it sounded really ridiculous. But the Assistant Attorney General, Karen Watkins, said that a change to this law could lead to, quote, societal ills like organized crime and prostitution. Is there? It seems like it sounds outlandish, but is there any real concern from that?
And just to add on to that, too, I think another one of the concerns they brought up that I read in the Austin American-Statesman was the fact that if, let's say, Brewery A sells their distribution rights to the distributor for $50,000 and Brewery B sells their distribution rights for $200,000, then there's going to be unfair. They're going to be able to handle that in an unfair way based on however much they paid for those individual distribution rights. Do you think there's any merit to that either?
All right, yeah, a couple different questions there. I'll try to remember them both as I address them. First, that comment that was made during the hearing, 2 days ago now, I guess, that is what the state is alleging. When I, reference that you can't just financially enrich one party to the detriment of the other party without some rational basis or some justification, that's what the state is latching onto, that no, there is a justification for us being involved in regulating the alcohol industry, and it's because we want to make sure that people aren't out there, getting drunk. Basically, she brought it back to the times of Prohibition when, in fact, I don't really know what exactly the status was then, but, she talked about a number of societal ills, whether it was prostitution or human trafficking. That didn't actually make the article, but human trafficking was referenced, and in my opinion, absolutely not. It has zero to do with it. Whether I sit down with a distributor to negotiate the sale of my territorial distribution rights, I think it has absolutely zero effect on whether someone consumes alcohol or not. I don't think it has any effect whatsoever, and that's at the heart of the suit. That's why I think it's unconstitutional. There is no valid reason that the state should be able to say, oh, no, let's make sure the brewer doesn't, profit from his brand. Everybody else can. It's just not a reason that I think holds merit. But
and the judge didn't seem to either. It seemed like, from what I read, she seemed to toss that argument aside, that it was kind of ridiculous.
Well, what I've said about the hearing itself was, if I had written a script, I don't think I could have written it any better. Things went extremely well for us. However, what you have to understand is that a judge may pepper one side and then 2 weeks later rule in their favor. One thing that she did say is that she was going to make a ruling within 2 weeks. So I was actually very pleased to hear her say that, because she doesn't have to make a ruling in 2 weeks. She could sit on it for 4 weeks, for 3 months, So for her to say, hey, I'm going to rule on this is huge. And so as good as I felt when I left there, you have to temper that enthusiasm knowing that, there are going to be times in the legal profession when you think you're going to win and you lose. And there are going to be times in the legal profession where you think you're going to lose and you win. All that being said, when I filed the lawsuit, I thought I was in the right. I didn't think that law was constitutional. There's a Texas Supreme Court decision passed last year that kind of clarifies the standard, and I think even bolsters our claim. So I believed we would win then. I believe even more strongly that we will win now. But again, it's I'm not the one making the decision. It's this impartial third party, this judge, and what happens after that, we'll see.
So do you want to add, Ron, your other question? You want to ask that again?
Oh yeah, I was just curious if, like I said, I read a little bit in the Austin American-Statesman. One of their arguments was if they pay different amounts to different breweries, that the distribution could somehow be influenced by that, depending on who paid more. But I guess my personal thought is they're probably going to promote their more popular brands anyway and give them better shelf space and that kind of thing. I don't know exactly how the distributors handle that, but do you think there's any validity to that part of the state's argument?
No, I really don't. I think there's a misunderstanding about a distributor's role from the beer consumer's perspective. I think a lot of people, and I think even some brewers, have this misconception, I should say, that when you sign a distributor, they're going to sell your beer. That's not the case. You are still responsible for selling your beer. The distributor is simply going to get that beer to the retailer that is ordering it. You look at some of these distributors, they have a massive portfolio. Do they care which beer they're selling? Talk to a distributor, ask them. Do they want to sell a lot of beer? It's their bottom line. Darn right they want to sell a lot of beer. But the real crux of it is the brewer. You're still responsible for selling that beer. So if I sell my rights or give away my rights, if I can't sell them to a distributor, I don't expect that distributor to sell my beer. I'm going to continue to sell my beer, which is, again, why I think I'm in the right. This is my brand I'm selling.
So do you have to sell to, just for instance, because we don't know, do you sell to, like, if you were going to get if you decided to start bottling and you wanted to put it in Kroger, do you have to go to Kroger directly, or does a distributor do that for you?
Well, that's a good question. A distributor is going to have some inroads, some folks that you can talk to. Right. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, they deal with those people day in and day out. So they have the ear of the people that make these decisions. But I'm the kind of guy that I'm still going to go in there, right? And I'm going to sell to these guys and, make sure that they are being taken care of and that we're providing whatever it is that they need.
And I guess
some of it's once you sign a distributor, typically they're going to merchandise that for you, make sure it's okay, but you can't just ignore it and think it's all being done. You better stay involved, and if there is an issue, address it with your distributor. And you're looking for a distributor that you have a good relationship with and that does this for a living and is going to be able to handle whatever you throw at them.
No, but the distributor does handle exactly. Let's just say again, like Marcus said, if you did bottle your beer, they do have some influence on if you're at the eye level shelf or if you're at the bottom shelf and that kind of stuff too, right? Is there any kind of, I don't know how the breweries interact with that part, but I've heard that from, we've had discussions with other breweries that have had that concern when they did sell off their distribution rights to say what kind of exposure we're going to get in a Kroger or a Tom Thumb or whatever. And I guess I don't know exactly how that works, but I would think the distributor kind of makes those decisions based on what they feel is more popular and will sell more, right? Or if maybe they get more money from the individual brewer. I don't know exactly how that works. But
well, again, we're talking about, three different levels of the three-tier system: the manufacturer, the distributor, and the retailer. And ultimately, the person who gets to decide what beer they have on their shelves is the retailer. I mean, if I own a grocery store, I don't care what my distributor says. I don't care if they want to put a beer that is not selling at my grocery store at eye level all the way across the refrigerated section. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to do that. They can provide you sales data and help you make that decision and show you what is selling and what is not selling. And that's where they're a resource, and you use that resource, and they're a valuable resource. I mean, these distributors, they're great at what they do.
So back to the assistant AG, there wasn't a lot of context around the statement in the article that I read, but she said that the quote, the distributors do not control the entire legislature. At least there is no proof that they do. Is that an argument that you guys levied during your arguments? I mean, or was that just something she inferred and tossed out there on her own?
Well, throughout the course of a hearing, you would actually do address facts or issues that sometimes aren't necessarily germane to the question of law before the court, but it will help with context. And so if a judge is confused about how things are operating, they may ask for clarifying questions on that. And so where that question came from in the courtroom was reference to how state SB 639 was introduced into the legislature, and there was evidence basically showing that the WBDT had, for all intents and purposes, written the nearly exact language. I don't think it was exact, but very close to the actual language that ended up being in a sponsored bill. And so there was a bit of an evidentiary paper trail that we were able to demonstrate. And so I think that comment of, hey, distributors don't control the legislature, that is one thing. But when you follow it up with, well, at least there's no proof they do, that
Yeah, well,
kind of says it all.
I think we all know how Washington works, and even in the local governments, it's lobbyists. Man, they have far too much power, and they are known for writing bills and handing them over to reps. So it's not uncommon practice. I did see a couple days ago, I think it was yesterday, in fact, you put out a tweet and you said that you had seen some backlash from some other Texas brewers. So I'm not asking you to name names, of course, but what were their concerns or their criticisms of what you guys are taking on?
Well, again, you asked a question earlier about, well, do you go the legal route or do you go the legislative route in trying to grow Texas craft beer? That's what I'm really trying to do here. I love craft beer. Sure. I fight for the small guy. And I'm the smallest of small guys. We're in my brewery here. It's pales in comparison to the size of many of these, still brand new brewers who are just opening up. And it really results in a philosophical difference between me and some of my fellow brewers out there with concern to how this all happened, how it all went down. Because not only are there politics at play on the distribution side of the fence. Trust me, there is politics at play within the brewer side as well. For the most part, we are very, very aligned, 100%. But I will say, and I have said, that there were definitely some brewers who weren't happy with me utilizing one of the legal remedies that is available to me, which is litigation. I flat out don't understand the objection. I'm trying to better the rights for all Texas craft brewers. There are a lot of Texas craft brewers that don't have this right anymore. They already have distributors. So, they don't really have a dog in the fight, and the vast majority of all those guys support us as well. And more brewers than not, don't misunderstand me, certainly support this. But there are some who believe that when you move or exhaust your legal remedies to the point of filing litigation, that it harms your legislative agenda, because then you're going to have that what they're going to have to face is, all right, we're moving through the legislative process, but you've got some of those brewers out there that are going to file lawsuits, and so they have to, kind of answer to that, where to me it's not, the point's almost moot. I shouldn't have to answer to the fact that I want to exercise my constitutional rights. Right. I mean, if you're violating my constitutional rights, I'm sorry if you're bent out of shape that you don't like that I'm going through litigation, but it was the avenue that was made available to me, and I'm going to utilize it. And it's too bad that they see it that way, but some people do believe that it harms our legislative initiative. I actually think it strengthens our legislative initiative. I think that if we actually are successful, you go to the table and say, yeah, not only are we asking for this, but if you do this, we're going to sue you and we're going to kick your butt in court, just like Jester King did, and just like hopefully, we do in our suit. So I think it basically gives you a stronger position at the bargaining table. But there's just not, I'm one guy, and I've said it many times, I'm unconventional and I do things a little bit differently, and I'm not afraid to ruffle feathers. And if I believe in something and it's the principle of it, I really don't waver. Yeah. And so I'm not going to, I literally have been asked if I would drop that lawsuit by folks that it would surprise you to hear, but you're right, I'm not naming names, I'm not playing that road, but it's kind of saddens me that I actually got that request, right, because it indicates to me, and talk to those guys, they may feel differently, but it just shows short-sightedness, right? That there's something bigger at play, and we should not hesitate to use whatever means we can to expand as opposed to contract the rights of Texas craft brewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of your partners in the fight is just moving on to other current events is Revolver, and they have been.
Never thought I'd be asked about this.
I know you've been asked about it probably several times, but how do you feel about the Revolver's sale of a majority stake to 10th and Blake?
I feel great. How do I feel? I feel great. No, I don't know.
Just from a craft beer perspective.
To pull back the curtain a little bit, Rhett Kiesler over at Revolver is probably my closest confidant in the beer industry. I used to say closest confidant in the craft beer industry. I don't know that they're a craft brewer anymore. But he is, clearly we're in litigation together, right? I do not fault him or anyone else at Revolver that made that decision. I mean, these guys have worked hard to create a brand, and it is very flattering when someone comes to you and says, what you have created is special, and we want to be a part of what you have created, and we've got the resources to do to your brand what you cannot do on your own. And it is super flattering. It is really cool to hear.
Yeah.
And, if you're made an offer that you just can't refuse, what do you do? I do not think this was their intent. I think there are some breweries that do open up with the mindset of all I want to do is make money. All I want to do is position this thing for sale later. Not just breweries, but any industry. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think this was their intent personally. But I am not going to fault these guys. I still love those guys over there. I support them in their decision. I'm disappointed, like I said, that they're not really a craft beer, a craft brewer anymore, and I won't really have them as a fellow Texas craft brewer to, get together with and talk about ideas. But it's just a business decision was made, and I'm not going to fault them for it. Those guys are still the same guys that I loved beforehand, and I still love them now.
Yeah, on some level, it's tough to fault anybody for trying to make money and make your brand more widely available. I totally get that. Would you ever see any circumstance where Peticolas would partner with a macro or be sold to a macro in some form?
It's craft beer. What is going on in the craft beer industry is it's almost like the Wild West right now. It is changing so quickly. I think you too would be surprised or probably many of your listeners as well, surprised at just the level of activity that is going on amongst private equity, big beer, other craft brewers, discussions that these guys are having with some of our fellow Texas craft brewers. I would answer it this way. Part of my vision is to be freedom to be unconventional, and I like to be able to do things my way, and that has allowed me to do things differently than most. It's one of the ways I distinguish myself and my brand. And so a sale oftentimes will leave you in a position where you can no longer do things your way. And so it would be very difficult for me to go down that road. I really don't think that's the road that I'm headed. That's certainly not my goal. That's not why I'm doing this. But, if Constellation comes and offers you $1 billion and your ballast point, if I get offered $1 billion, I'm going to sell my brewery. I'll tell you right now. But I'm not going to get a $1 billion offer. I'm not Ballast Point. I'm not Revolver. I mean, I'm a little small, tiny guy just brewing a little bit of beer. I'm not. So I don't foresee that as my path, and that's not why I got into this. This is a family business for me. I love what I do. I have a passion for beer. I got into this business because I wanted to get out of the legal profession and into something different. I love what I do. I enjoy making beer. I'll never forget driving in one morning at like 4 a.m. thinking, man, I'm going to brew beer. This is awesome. So I really like what I do. So that is definitely not the route that I think that we're headed.
So you have 3 kids, right? You have
Correct.
Twins and a girl, right? A daughter. That's not a twin?
Yeah, well, I've got 13. God, is she? No, she's 12. 12-year-old daughter, and then twins, boy-girl twins.
Okay. So they're all really young, obviously. Do any of them show interest in your business, and do you ever have any dreams of them taking it over when you decide to, roll into retirement?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a whole nother issue because transitioning from, generation to generation for a business also presents a unique set of problems, or it's a unique situation. It can work in many instances, and it won't work in many other instances. So how you transition that is one thing. And yeah, we're talking much further down the road,
sure.
But they're all interested in it. They love it.
Yeah.
They think it's cool that, we go into Hop Dottie and they see our tap handles on there that, they've come home and told me my teacher told me that she loves Velvet Hammer, right? And so then we I see the teacher. I'm like, cool, that was really cool. And she goes, right after I told your kid that, I thought, should I have told their kid that? But I love that. They enjoy that. I mean, they've been a part of it since the start. I mean, it's got our name on it. I can remember it on day one, them going out, like the first tour we ever had, trying to offer up stickers, and people say, yeah, I want a sticker. And then they'd just be like, oh, $1. And so, they absolutely enjoy this. My son definitely loves to talk beer, and my oldest daughter, she's just already got the entrepreneurial spirit, whether it's a brewery or something else, and we're watching Shark Tank and doing all that, so she'll probably be a small business owner of some sort or another, but you never know what the future holds, and that's a ways down the line.
So let's go back to the beginning. I want to know, where did you grow up? El Paso, right?
Yeah, so I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. I went all through kindergarten through senior year at high school in El Paso. I left at 18, and I actually moved back there for 10, 11, maybe even a year, 12 months after I graduated law school before I came back here. But basically, I left El Paso when I graduated high school, started at Texas Tech.
What year was that?
I graduated in 89, okay. So I'm much older than you guys. Thanks for fronting me out on
about
that.
10 years.
I appreciate that. Started at Texas Tech and realized in fairly short order that Lubbock was not for me, and moved here to Dallas in '92.
We grew up in Abilene, so we understand that Abilene was not for us either. Neither was Lubbock.
Yeah, we know that area of Texas.
Yeah, we're quite well versed.
I might rather live in Lubbock than Abilene. I'm not sure, but I guess Abilene's closer to Dallas, so
yeah, it's a little more centrist, I guess.
Moved here in '92 and left shortly for law school, and then came back. So I don't know. I almost consider this home now. I think I've lived here longer than anywhere else. So yeah, Dallas is home.
Yeah, I've been here since '98, and Dustin's been here since '99. I think 2000. Yeah. So we've just we met in 7th grade, which was '91 ish. Yeah. And we've been friends ever since. So. Yeah, and we've been here ever since as well. So do you have just one brother, Charlie, right? He was a cop?
No, two. My brother Richard actually lives here in DFW, and then Charlie he's currently living in Arlington, Virginia, but he's lived in L.A. for the past 10 years.
Okay. Are you the youngest, middle?
Yes,
You're the youngest.
I'm the youngest.
And what does your other brother do, Richard?
He's a director of finance for Michaels, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And is Charlie still a cop, I assume?
No. So he's... God, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say. I guess I'm allowed to say. I think it's maybe even on my website. But yeah, so he's an FBI agent. He's worked for the FBI for a decade and a half or something like that.
Okay. That's cool.
He was a cop some time ago in Albuquerque. Yeah.
I love the description for Sit Down. You talked about his episodes of Cops.
Those are the best names, the ones that, were originated from the family or have some, extra meaning other than just a beer name. But yeah, sit down or I'll sit you down was definitely a line that we uttered to each other many, many times after seeing his performance on Cops when they followed him around, which was great.
Yeah, speaking of your family background and looking on your website, I saw that you were originally inspired by your mother, who actually created a Mexican-style beer. Have you, just out of curiosity, have you guys ever thought about maybe trying to put that out as a special release with Peticolas?
I get that question a lot. Maybe I ought to consider that. I never really thought about it. There are still so many styles of beer that I want to do, and my approach has never been to have 61 different beers. I've probably been a little bit more of a minimalist with the number of styles that we put out than your traditional brewer. There's still a porter that I want to do. There's still a milk stout I want to do. There's still a stout I want to do. There's a number of beers I want to do before I really think about doing that. It would fit well. And when story is great because I like to connect to people, and so maybe there will come a time, and the more I get questions about it, the more likely I am to do it, because I am very, very responsive to what the market wants. And so when people are talking about that, I start to think, well, maybe that is a good idea. But it's also a matter of, all right, well, are you asking that question because it would make for a good story, or are you going to want to drink that kind of beer?
Right. Was your mother still with us?
Yeah, absolutely she is. She stopped brewing not long after I got into it, saying, well, forget this. Your beer's so much better than mine that I'm not going to do it anymore. But yeah, she actually lived in El Paso most of her life, but she just recently moved here to North Texas as well.
So what does she think of your success and your brewery?
Oh, she loves it. I mean, she thinks it's great. I think she gets a big kick out of going into local bars and saying, "Hey, that's my son's beer." That's my son's beer. She gets a kick out of it for sure. I think all my family members probably do. I mean, I've been hit up by Peticolas all over the country saying, "Oh yeah, we're related via Alfred Brown. I need to buy a T-shirt or something like that." So I think it's been pretty general consensus among the Peticolas clan, and there's not a ton of Peticolases, which is one of the reasons we named the brewery after our name. But yeah, they've given us a great deal of support, and they seem to take a lot of pride in it.
So I found your law website, and I saw that in there it said you're the fifth generation trial attorney. So why did you choose to leave personal injury law or law altogether?
So really, the story is that before I went to law school, I put together a list of the goals that I wanted to accomplish in the legal industry. And I went on my way practicing law and really enjoy the practice of law. In fact, when I got into brewing, I eventually thought I would go back to practicing law, but brewing is so much more fun that I will probably stick to brewing as opposed to going back to practice law. But I came across that list in 2000, maybe 2009, but I think it's 2010, and started, just crossing everything out. And I realized as I went over the list that I had done everything that I set out to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the kind of guy that can just really go through the motions. I really want a challenge. I want the day to challenge me. And so I started thinking about, all right, well, if I'm going to do something else, what would I do? I mean, practicing law, as you said, a fifth-generation attorney was in my blood. That was kind of always, this is probably what I'll do. Maybe I'll end up doing something else. But, I always had that in my back pocket. Mm-hmm. And so that was the route that I took. But ultimately, I was in a position, I thought, well, let's make a passion a job. And I really have two passions in life, and it's beer and soccer. And I literally could not find anybody who wanted a, wrong side of the prime of his career, torn up ACL, right midfielder. There wasn't anyone out there. I contacted FC Dallas, and I'm the only really interest they seem to have from just, a cold call was, sales on the very low level, and that just isn't something that I was going to be able to do.
Right.
Simply because I enjoyed working for myself and didn't want to be in a sales position at the bottom of the totem pole, leaving at 4:00, having to listen to someone say, "Hey, why are you leaving at 4:00?"
Right.
I didn't want that. So I thought, well, beer. I've got soccer's not going to work. Can I do something in the beer industry? And I was brewing beer at home at the time. I'm like, I love beer. And my wife and I had received a business plan to invest in a brewery, and we're seriously considering investing in it. Mm-hmm. Till one night, we were really talking about what we liked about what the plan entailed, or what we liked about the plan itself, what we didn't like. And then one night she's like, well, why don't we do this ourselves? And that's literally when the light went off over my head. I'm like, why don't we do this ourselves? Because Dallas at the time was the largest city in the United States without a brewery. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, it's either because there's no market for it, which is a very, very real possibility. You better consider that, or no one's capitalized on the opportunity. Obviously, I thought it was the latter as opposed to the former, and also thought, if I don't do it, I think when I'm 70 years old, I'll look in the mirror and regret it. And I don't want to have the regret. I would rather try and fail than to never, give it a shot at all.
So starting with that business plan would have been what's the process of starting a brewery, or at least your experience? What were some of the challenges along the way, just going from nothing to where we are now?
Well, it's basically challenge after challenge after challenge. You need to really negotiate a rocky road. You better be able to overcome obstacles. Mm-hmm. When I started, it was not even legal to brew beer where we're sitting right now. I literally had to change the law to be able to brew beer. So that was a challenge. That's a big barrier to entry. I educated myself. I enrolled with the American Brewers Guild and took their intensive brewing science and engineering program. I'm a big believer in education, but I wanted to have some education and some way to figure out how to scale up what I was doing in my backyard at 5 gallons to 500 gallons at a time. So there are definitely points in this process where it's there's one point in particular where it's kind of no looking back, but you're going through the process. Hey, I've educated myself. You write a business plan. If you don't write a business plan, you're fooling yourself. It'll really make you ask the hard questions of yourself as to whether or not, it's going to succeed. But where it all really hinges is opening a brewery is a capital intensive process, right? And once you write that check for all that brewing equipment, at that point it's, all, full sail ahead.
Right.
There's no turning back. That equipment is now starting to be produced, and you are in it. You're in it for the long haul. You've written this massive check. I mean, It's a big check to get this equipment rolling, and then the next thing is, all right, well, that equipment is going to show up in X number of months, and I better have a facility ready to receive said equipment. And there's just bumps all along the way. I will never forget talking, our first year we were fortunate, and we won a gold medal at the Great American Beer Festival, and there were, I guess Real Ale had won something as well, and I was talking to a guy over there, and he mentioned one of the problems that they were having, and I'm like, oh my God, I thought by the time you were your size, you had that figured out. And he's like, oh no, the problems just get bigger and more frequent the bigger you get. And that was kind of an eye-opener for me to realize, there's just always something else. There's always something else being thrown at you. I mean, Senate Bill 639, for example, there's another one, a curveball out of left field. So you just need to really figure out how to roll with the punches. I'm a big believer in, it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. And you need to figure out and, reflect and figure out what's the best method of responding to this obstacle, to this situation that may be difficult that's been, put before you.
So you're, I won't say you're famous for it, but you don't bottle right now. You only distribute to within 39 miles of Dallas. And I've got another question on that in a minute, but is keeping things is one of the reasons for not bottling is keeping things as financially lean as possible? Because yesterday we saw that Grapevine, Specs put out a tweet that said they were shutting down completely, but actually what they're doing is just going down to a tap room only, and they're not going to distribute beer anymore. Is that one of the reasons for not bottling? Is because you're trying to keep the challenges as few and far between, especially financially?
God, so many ways to answer that. Yes, that's the answer to that. There are a number of factors that go into that. So, none of these two breweries that are around here are exactly identical, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. What works for one brewery is not going to work for another brewery. The route that Revolver took wouldn't work for me. And part of it is, how are you structured? Again. Yeah, I own 100% of this brewery. I don't know how many other brewers out here can actually say that, but I literally own all of it. I don't have to go to an investor. I don't have to go to a bank. I don't know a penny on this place. So it allows us to, again, when I kind of mentioned my vision of being, free to be unconventional, it allows me to be unconventional in that matter. And so when you ask about bottling, part of it is everybody's bottling. It used to be the model that you opened a brewery and you hit draft accounts and you established your brand that way, and then you started bottling. Those days are gone and over. Now brewers are bottling or canning as quickly as they possibly can and trying to get their beer anywhere and everywhere as quickly as they can. And I don't fault them. That's a perfect model, but that wasn't my model. My model was very slow, consistent growth. I don't carry any debt. So, I'm not... I reinvest in the brewery constantly. We've been through 2 expansions, but protecting myself financially, absolutely, that's a facet of it. But probably a bigger facet of it is, everyone else is doing it, and I'd rather do, when everyone zigs, I like to zag. But 2 other massive reasons: distribution and quality. Beer is better. Draft beer is better. It's when I keg my beer, it goes straight from a bright tank at 39 degrees, 38 degrees, straight into my cooler that is 38, 39 degrees, straight into my refrigerated box truck, straight into a retailer's refrigerator. It is staying cold, never being subjected to light, and subjected to very, very little travel. So for me, it was very important for consumer to have an exceptional, not a good, but an exceptional experience with their first drink of my beer. Craft beer drinkers are finicky, right? You drink something and you don't like it, it is hard to get that guy back. It's going to be hard to get him back. So I wanted to I wanted people in the market to know my beer before I ever got into a bottle or a can. I would still say people don't know my beer. I used to have a lot of confidence in that, but now a little less. I think we have actually done a decent job of establishing a brand in the market, and the craft beer guys definitely know us. But, still putting that bottle on those, I go to Kroger, I go to Central Market, we all do, right? And you see these big, huge, beautiful displays of that beer sitting out at 72 degrees, and guess what? It's degrading, right? And unless you're really investing in proper bottling equipment or proper canning equipment, you're killing your product, right? I mean, you could get into it, do it very inexpensively for $50,000 and put something that's going to let all kinds of oxygen in and stale that beer. And then guess what? That first drink of that beer that consumer has, if that's their first beer, they're going to be like, oh my God, I don't like this. Mm-hmm. And it's not at all what the brewer intended. I use an example of a local brewer here who makes a beer I absolutely love. One day, my wife brought home a 6-pack. I opened up one of those beers and poured it. And I was like, oh my God, this is nowhere close to what this beer is supposed to be. And it really reinforced in my mind. I mean, I know the beer. I love the beer. I'm going to continue to order the beer because I know the beer. But I think about the regular consumer who says, oh God, that was my first experience with this beer. I'm not going to drink it anymore. Yeah. And so that is also a problem. Size is also an issue, right? Because if I'm going to get into bottling, I'm not going to do a little $50,000 expansion. You're talking about $500,000, right? To actually bottle and do it properly, not just do it. I'm not about doing things quickly. I'm about doing them properly. So if I'm going to get into it, I want to do it properly. But then it goes right back into distribution. I can distribute these nice big kegs, 15.5 gallons, 5 gallons, to these retailers who make great return on the beer that we sell him, who know us by name, who enjoy us, who we literally, eat together. I go to the restaurants, I support them. When you go to Kroger and drop off beer, they don't care about you or who you are. They want you to go straight in that shelf. Hey, Michael, that shelf, your guy wasn't in here. He left at 10 last night. It's 9 this morning. We need that thing straightened out again. Right. And I don't have the resources to distribute beer in the package game. It's a different model. Again, I don't know that consumers know that. I don't know that all brewers know that until they get into it. But distributing a packaged product as opposed to a keg is apples and oranges. They're two different things. And can I today, right now, distribute bottles and cans and provide the level of service that I expect of my company? The answer is no, unfortunately. Right. Until I can do it, and I'm not saying that I can't. There are some examples of folks out there who have done it. I'm not going to do it. A distributor can really, that's where, it comes into, well, heck, if I'm going to distribute and I need a distributor and now I have to give my rights away, it's right. So it plays right into that. But so it's not just a yes/no question, a yes/no answer to the question. There are so many facets of bottling that people don't necessarily think.
Yeah, there's a lot in there I'd never even thought about. So, speaking of being small, why? I was wondering. It says on your website you only distribute to 39 miles around Dallas. Why not 40? I mean, why? Is there a specific reason for 39?
Yeah, the 39 really only developed because I searched long ago how far away Fort Worth and Denton are from Dallas, and one was 35 miles from my brewery, and one was 39. I think maybe Denton's further. Maybe Denton's 39. And so that just stuck. I'm like, look, that's as far as we're going to go. We're not going to go any further. And it goes back to the fact that I can't. For me, it's about not having the beer there on one occasion. It's about always having that beer there, the repeat customer, right? So when I want my beer to be at Meadowsome Moth every time I go there. And this is, again, where I differ from many other breweries. It's not about getting anywhere and everywhere as fast as I can. I want to saturate this market. It's only becoming more and more hyper local. 5 years ago, 512 made a nice local beer that I would drink here in Dallas. Well, fast forward to today, any beer from Austin is not local. And maybe a few more months, Fort Worth beer is not local to Dallas anymore. So for me, it's about this location, and I don't want to just send a truck down to Austin and drop off beer because, again, I haven't figured out how to service that market the way I service the market here. If there's an issue, you call us, and we're handling that issue, if not that day, by the next day. And I feel like I'm selling my company short if I go down to Austin and someone says, hey, I ran out of beer, or this line has an issue. Oh, okay, well, we'll be down there next Wednesday.
All right.
That's not perfect for the customer. I want to deliver to the customer what I deliver to my customers here. And, but you can do it. Revolver, I mean, again, they're a great example. They have somehow packaged product, somehow gotten their beer to Austin and other cities, and have figured it out with the self-distribution model. So it can be done. I just haven't had any of the external forces on me to do that because we've grown at such a rate that it's made me and my employees happy. Will I consider doing that? Yeah, at some point I will. Do I want to have beer in Austin or in Houston, all over the state eventually? Yeah, at some point I do, but when I do it, I want it to be with the strategy and as effective as what we have been able to pull off here.
Right. Yeah. I completely understand where you're coming from on that. It makes total sense. So you used to do, from what I understand, every job in the brewery. What is your role now? Do you still do every job? Or what do you do specifically now? other than maybe come up with recipes?
I love that question. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, for the first year I did, you name it. I cleaned the bathrooms. I brewed the beer. I cellared the beer. I kegged the beer. I delivered it to accounts. I answered all questions. My day-to-day now is much, there is a lot more of working on the business than in the business for me now. It's much more strategic. What are we going to do? How are we going to accomplish this goal setting? It's funny because, I got into this thing and, this is awesome. I'm getting away from the computer and I'm literally brewing beer, and I love brewing beer, and it's physically, exhausting. You'd get a workout doing it, but I loved it.
Right.
And now I haven't brewed a beer this year. I think the last beer I brewed was last year. And I used to always brew the new beer, but my brewers are so darn good that, it's like, all right, well, here's the recipe. Let's go ahead and try this with the new beer. So, I mean, I'm definitely very highly involved in every aspect of what happens here, whether it's brewing, whether it's distribution, whether it's financial, whether it's human resources, whatever it is, the buck stops with me.
So how do you balance, because you've got a family, you've got kids, how hard is it to balance family life with work life, especially when you were doing all the jobs back then? But
I've always had a knack to be able to figure that out. Some people, I always screw this up. Some people live to work. Some people work to live. I work to live. For me, I would rather spend time with my family and friends, sitting around drinking beer, having a good time, than working. Now, you can't just extend that out all the way. You've got to work. I mean, you've got to function. You've got to be a good citizen, right? You need to put yourself in a situation where you're doing all the things that you need to do to be a contributing member of society. So I always had the ability to seem to be able to figure out how to weave in the work life with the family life. But again, that's kind of where I'm different than most. When you talk about, I'm giving away revenue by not bottling or canning, because I could probably double production if I did that. I'm giving away revenue because I am not open for a tour every weekend. I don't have a tap room here. You know what? I mean, just about every brewery now is open, has a tap room, and is open all the time. And the reason the reason I'm only open 4 hours a month, 2 hours on the first and third Wednesday, is because on those other Saturdays I want to spend time with my family. And when I have these tours, guess what? I'm here. I don't believe it's the beer industry. I believe it's the entertainment industry. People want to be entertained. They want to have a good time. I love it down here. When someone comes and they talk to us and my crew, it's about the experience. I want them to have fun and to think, man, that was awesome. I loved it, as opposed to, and I've been in breweries where it's like this. You walk in and it's just some guys pouring beer that don't know anything about the brewery, anything about it. I don't meet anyone who has anything to do with the brewery, and that's not the experience I want when people come in here. I want them to have a kick-ass experience. And unfortunately, I just don't want to work every single weekend. Yeah. And as a result, I'm just not open as often. But it's a good example of, the fact that I don't have an investor breathing down my neck saying, well, see that weekend revenue? We could double that very easily by doing this every weekend. I don't have to listen to that. It's like, well, I recognize that, and I know what that amount is, but that amount is not worth me not spending another Saturday with my family or friends.
To get kind of more into the quick hit random questions, what was your first craft beer?
Gosh, it's hard for me to say what my first craft beer was. I mean, for me, it all started with Mexican beers. I mean, I was walking across the border at the age of 15 from El Paso into Juarez, drinking buckets of beer. A bucket of beer was $2, and you got 5 beers. It was $2 for 5 beers, and that was Dos Equis or Carta Blanca or Pacifico. Whatever. Tecate was another big beer we would drink back then. Got it, the person who really got me into enjoying, really, at the time we just called them imports, right? And really, before I started enjoying craft beer, I started enjoying your Franziskaner's, this Julius Echter Hefeweizen. Oh, this thing's awesome. And then it started to bleed into your Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, right? I mean, oh God, it's still such a great beer.
Oh yeah.
And then, it just, like the door opens up, right? And you kind of say goodbye to all that, big beer that you've been drinking before, and it's like you've got so much to explore. It was years. It was a number of years before I opened up a Belgian ale. I remember the first time I opened up a Belgian ale, and I'd been drinking all kinds of beer for a long period of time. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a different experience than any of these other beers have ever provided me. So, Sierra Nevada was definitely one of those early ones, as was Anchor Steam. But your Julius Echter, your Sammy Smiths. I was drinking a lot of that as well before, got into some of the jewels that you know of in the craft beer industry.
So, outside of your own brewery, of course, do you have a favorite brewery that you could point to?
I do. If I just say, hey, this is my favorite single brewery, it's New Glarus Brewing Company in Wisconsin. It's funny because I heard I'd listened to y'all's last podcast where y'all reviewed Sit Down or I'll Sit You Down. And kind of a funny story about that is brewers are very hard on themselves. You ask, hey, quick hit. And my response doesn't seem to be a quick hit answer.
No, the answers don't have to be quick.
But I really, really respect the beers that they produce at New Glarus, and they make a double IPA called Screamin' Eagle or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's called, and I had a glass of it one day after work when I was at home. I'm like, God dang, this beer is good. This beer is awesome. It's another hit by New Glarus. Every beer I have of theirs is really good, and I thought this is one of the best double IPAs I've ever had. Well, the next day I came home, and so in my garage I have my refrigerator where I pulled that bottled beer out of, and right next to that is one of my kegerators, and I poured myself a sit down, and I took a drink of that beer, and as I was walking to my back door, I'm like, oh man, this beer's as good as that beer I had yesterday. And I literally stopped in my tracks. And that was another one of those seminal moments for me where I had never given me or my brewery real credit for, I had, won awards and, had a lot of accolades and write-ups, but never gave myself the credit. Never, other people would say it's great, but just like, I never was all the way there, bought in. It's like, oh, it got to be awesome, got to make exceptional beer, got to be awesome, it's got to be exceptional beer. It's all about the beer. It's not merchandising, it's just beer. And when I literally set that down or brought that beer off of my lips and thought that I just said this beer was as good as the beer made or brewed by the brewery that I hold in the highest of regards, I'm like, dude, give yourself some credit. And that was the first time I literally patted myself on the back and said, good job, you actually are making good beer. That was the first time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what advice would you give, or maybe warnings, to a startup brewer?
Where to start?
maybe just your number one piece of advice or warning.
Number one, business plan. I alluded to it before. Write a business plan. There's a section where you're considering your opportunities and your threats out there. Craft beer is growing. We know that. But it's not growing at the rate of new breweries opening. When I said, there's no market in North Texas for a craft beer, you need to consider that. When I got in, and Deep Ellum got in, and Lakewood, and Revolver, it was just a few of us, and there was this huge movement going on, and D Magazine's writing articles, and the Observer's writing articles, and we got into the public eye very, very quickly. And we all kind of distinguished ourselves from one another. I mean, ourselves and Deep Ellum, those were the first two. I was right after those guys, and we cannot be any more different in terms of how we come across, which was great because we were both able to identify with different consumers. But
and I was going to say, definitely way different than Franconia and Rar, which were really the only ones around here.
Yeah, right.
My understanding at the time.
Absolutely. But where I'm going with that is, if you're opening up a brewery now, you open up to little to no fanfare. I mean, people will come to me and say, "Oh, hey, I had this brewery's beer." I'm like, "Oh, I hadn't heard of that brewery. I didn't even know they were open." So you better have a plan, right, to differentiate yourself and be different from other people, as opposed to just try to do what other people have already done. And I might say, look at the market, right? Find a market where, we were able to do that here in North Texas. North Texas was way underdeveloped. What happened here happened so much later than in many other parts of the country. This has already happened. So you might want to look to a place that has that. And I would just say that, do your homework, because, you referenced Grapevine yesterday. No, they're not closing, but they're changing operations, and it's a changing world, and there's mergers and acquisitions and private equity money behind other folks. And are you going to have the resources? Are you going to have the know-how to get into the market and really actually make a difference? Because between me, you, and all your listeners and everyone else who will listen, I don't think that we are done hearing about breweries that are going to fail here in Texas and North Texas as well.
Yeah, there's you can't always put a lot of stock in rumors, of course, but one of the big ones I've been hearing lately is somebody's about to buy one of the breweries around here, like lock, stock, and everything. Just a turnkey operation. Like we saw, Firewheel, when they shut down, Backcountry out of Colorado bought their entire operation. And apparently, I don't know who it is, but there's been no names tossed around, but that's apparently the latest rumor. So,
I think you should absolutely be ready for something like that. That's what's happening across the country. Don't think that Texas is unlike what's happening everywhere else. And I think the Revolver transaction of last week, I guess that was just last week, right? Really kind of the Independence transaction with Heineken, Lagunitas, maybe a month, 2 months ago, really sends that signal that this stuff's happening here. And I'm trying to tell you guys, this stuff is happening here, and you should be ready for it. There are a lot of different ways to move in the craft beer industry right now. And I think you shouldn't. Was I surprised by the Revolver sale? Not in the least bit. It didn't surprise me at all. I was actually most surprised that it had taken this long. I'd maybe targeted somebody else is actually happening first, but in no way am I surprised. And I definitely don't think you should be surprised if with any kind of merger or acquisition or restructuring, because it's going to happen.
We want to be definitely conscious of your time, so we got 2 more questions.
Sure.
What does your day look like on average?
What is what?
Your work day look like on average?
It depends on the work day. On Monday, I was in a suit for the first time in quite some time, in Austin, enjoying the hearing on our motion for summary judgment. It was actually kind of nice going to court, not having to prepare and letting somebody else do that. So it really depends on the day.
Okay.
Today I had you guys in. I actually talked to some distributors earlier in the day, not because I want to sign a distributor, because I really don't want to sign a distributor. Mm-hmm. I enjoy distributing my own beer, but that's part of the being in the industry. Part of the day prior to that was strategy with some of the things that I will be doing over the course of the end of this year and into next year.
I do have to say it's impressive that you do self-distribute, because I think we mentioned this on the episode that you listened to, but Velvet Hammer is one of the most common craft beers that appears everywhere. Maybe Deep Ellum IPA and you guys seem to be the two that get in everywhere. So I feel like that We talked to other craft brewers that have self-distributed in the past, and it seems like that's quite an intense process to be able to maintain all of those different taps and deal with all those relationships. So, Franconia was one that we talked to, and Lakewood was one we talked to, just to mention a couple, when they were self-distributing. And so that's very impressive that you guys have been able to have such a presence and get into all these locations.
Yeah, I mean, we're really running two businesses here. When you talk about my day-to-day, I'm operating a brewery. I'm responsible for the brewery's operations, but we're running a distribution business. I'm also responsible for a distribution business. And I definitely take pride in how we've been able to penetrate the market distributing on our own. I don't know for a fact, I think we're actually the largest. We're a small brewery still, but I think we're the largest self-distributing brewery. But I remain a big believer that I can represent my brand better than anybody else can. And when that distributor walks in with 20 brands, I think our guy that walks in with one brand can do a better job servicing that customer. But time will tell. It's only there are limits to self-distribution. I will tell you. I mean, you asked about, hey, I would love to have a big giant cooler in Austin, and then I could distribute out of Austin, right? Well, guess what? There's a law that says I can only have my beer spend the night at my manufacturing facility. So when any of these brewers from North Texas send beer down to Austin or Houston or wherever, if they don't have a distributor, that beer has to be back here by the end of the day. And so you've got these tired drivers on the road going back and forth. So, it's just kind of another example of, oh man, our back's against the wall. We really can't have a distribution operation there. You've got to do this, as my buddy Rhett has mentioned, this Berlin airlift to distribute beer to another city. Think about trying to distribute beer to El Paso. It's a 10-hour drive.
Yeah, wow. That is very daunting. So last question, it's kind of silly, but in Texas we have several personal injury lawyers that have like the Texas Hammer. They have crazy nicknames. Did you ever have a nickname like something ridiculous?
I detest all those nicknames. That's just the off. You mentioned the long line of lawyers that I come from. If I had it my way, we'd go back to 1970, and you could not even advertise. Right. Lawyers couldn't advertise. Back then, you're handing out a card. That was your advertisement. It's degrading to the profession, I think. I think it's degrading to have a name like the Texas Hammer or all that. It used to be a very noble profession, something that I still take pride in it, but sure. I think, you went to a dinner party in 1920 with my great-grandfather, and he says, I'm a lawyer, and people, ooh, wow, how interesting, you're a lawyer, let me ask you questions. And, I go to a dinner party, oh, I'm a lawyer, oh, really, my brother's a lawyer, oh, my son's a lawyer, oh, my neighbor's a lawyer, everyone's a lawyer. But no, I'm firmly against the nicknames for an attorney, because I just think it's degrading to the profession. I see it higher, I see it as above that, but I'm probably on an island there too. What a surprise.
Have you seen, just as the last point, have you seen the guy, I forget his name, he calls himself the Law Hawk, and he's the one that did all the ridiculous
commercials? Yeah, I have seen that.
That guy's
now,
awesome.
Again, entertainment is entertainment, and that's hilarious. And if you're going to do it, go all the way, do it all the way. I mean, he's doing it as well as the guy from Better Call Saul,
Yeah, and I heard an interview with him just outside of that, and he talked about, obviously it was just for a marketing stunt, and he actually comes across as way less full of himself than some other attorneys might, come across as. So it's nice to see that he's really taking it just as parody. Yeah, and he's really using it to fuel his business.
It's clear that that's what he's doing, right? Yeah. And so it comes across that way for sure.
Well, thank you for all your time. Thanks for hanging out with us, and congratulations on all your success.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, and let's go pour another beer.
So there was our, I think, extremely successful, most luxurious interview with Michael Peticolas.
Tremendous.
Thanks again to Michael. He very, very gracious and talked to us for a long time. So
yes, he did. On an off day when he's not normally supposed to have people in there.
Right. He was busy.
I mean, I'd say supposed to. I guess he does whatever the hell he wants. But when he doesn't normally have people in there.
Well, thanks for listening to yet another episode of Brew Bloods. We are still here. We're going to keep going as far as you know, or maybe we'll just stop tomorrow. But that was episode 65 of Brew Bloods. Call us at 469-573-BEER. You can email us at brewbloodsshow@gmail.com.
I mean, you can email us.
You can email us through the place. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as Brew Bloods.
If you want to see more pictures from the brewery, you can go to our website, brewbloods.net. There's also links there to subscribe to the show in every form and or fashion. iTunes, RSS, Google Play, TuneIn, other things. If you don't know how to subscribe, there's also a guide to show you how to subscribe to the show.
There's a guy? Is it you?
It's a guy. Yeah, it's me, like, with a completely different, more sexy body.
Do you use a laser pointer?
I'm dressed exactly like Clippy from Microsoft, from Windows 95.
You kind of whirl into the side like that?
Hey, I'm Clippy Mark.
Boom.
I'm going to show you how to subscribe to podcast.
I don't know why I
Sound like the kid from Overboard. She goes.
Exactly.
It kind of sound like Louis Armstrong, too.
A little bit.
What a wonderful beer.
Maybe we'll have an interview with Clippy Mark next week.
Louis Armstrong, Clippy Beer, Mark. Yeah. All right, well, that was dumb. We'll catch you guys next week for episode 66. The interns don't like it. Episode 66 of Brew Bloods. For Dustin, I'm Mark.
For Mark, I'm Dustin.
Probst.
Probst.